All right, here we are. Welcome.
I love this theme music.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I made this track.
No way.
Yeah, this is a Whirl original.
It's bumping.
All right.
Minimal and textured.
Yo, how are the levels over there? Good? Una. Alan, sound good? Okay, cool. All right. Okay, welcome to early day. It's not late night, it's early day.
Early for me.
Early day with Whirl. And this time, we have a special guest, a very special guest. Today we have, give a big round of applause for a special guest, Jorge. Yeah, how's it going? Don't forget talking to that mic too, so everyone can hear you.
Hey, fam.
Yo, all right.
That's the camera right there, right?
Yeah, that
just
cell phone right
I'm,
there is
I'm
the
looking
camera.
into people's eyes.
Jorge, so happy to have you here. Love
Happy to
hanging
be
out
here.
with you. Love talking with you. Excited to talk about, what we're going to talk about, which could be anything.
Anything. My publicist, I told you.
Yep.
To work through my publicist that everything was on the table.
Yeah, your publicist told me that there's no rules.
Yeah, right. No rules.
Your publicist said, don't be afraid to fuck shit up.
Let it rip. Let it rip.
So, Jorge, I met you not totally through the dance scene. We met like out front of a bar once, but we just instantly dove into a conversation about techno and techno activism.
Yeah.
And I feel like a good point of introduction to our audience today would be to ask you about your origins in rave culture, because you've been around for a minute. You know, you've been around.
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying that you're young and beautiful. So, if you would, we'd love to hear about some of your early rave experiences in Philly or elsewhere, and what that meant for you and how that formed you a little bit.
Cool.
Go for it.
Awesome. All right. Well, it was my first rave was 1994 in Philly when I just moved here for school to Drexel, and I moved here from New Jersey, and I when we were like installed in the dorms, which that year was like Kelly Hall, which was it's a classic, Kelly Hall. So one of my neighbors was a full-blown fucking techno DJ from the Midwest.
Oh wow!
From Ohio.
Do you remember their DJ name?
Just Bob Brown. Eventually,
Bob Brown.
Eventually, he started his own label called Framework Music, and he put out vinyl, and it was like hard, banging, funky, minimal techno.
That was your housemate.
What's that? That was my neighbor right next door.
Oh, your neighbor.
Yeah.
Lucky.
In the dorm. So I'd never. I'd grown up like most of us. I grew up in the '80s, and my whole life I'd loved synth pop and craft work and electronic music in general, but never specifically had I been exposed to techno, to that.
Wow.
So that
was the first time you heard it.
Yeah, and then we became pals. And when he got to Philly, he was already like trying to set up nights and do. He was trying to DJ in the city.
So some of those nights were your first experiences of techno.
The first rave I ever went to was at some point in that year, I think 94, 95. He started a monthly at the Truck, and this is the old Truck.
Okay.
The old Truck, and it was called Flight, and it was every Friday. No, it became a weekly, and at that point it was techno, just techno every week, and it would be him and a couple other residents. It was Mace was the other guy. Mace and Bob Brown were the big, and then everyone else. Eventually, it got successful enough that they were bringing out big names from the Midwest and from Detroit and Chicago, and it was techno mostly, and it was pretty amazing. And that was my first rave.
So it kind of it fell into your lap almost.
Yeah, pretty much. And I was a kid, and it melted my face. And
yeah,
I remember,
tell us about what it felt like.
The Truck, you know how when you walk in, and back then what I remember from the truck is how much it was like a rougher space. It was just a lot more.
Safe space wasn't a thing back then.
No, no. And then, so I walk in and I'm still like, that's my first year living in Philly. And my look was different. It wasn't yet like I looked like I had come from suburbia in New Jersey. So my look is what I would kind of describe as who was the kid on what was that show with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Remember the brother?
Fresh Prince.
The brother?
Will Smith, Big Willie style.
Yeah, but not him. It was the Carlton.
You were Carlton at the rave.
My look was very Carlton,
Hell yeah.
very Carlton.
Hell
So I
yeah.
walk in, and it's just the system in there sounded fantastic. It was all fog. It was great visuals, great lasers, great. There'd be like where the stage is was just always a gigantic fucking screen, huge.
So your
screen
first
with all
experience was proper.
visuals.
It was proper as
It
fuck.
was a proper, and then half the kids had face masks on. Face masks, coincidentally, which
Yeah.
I was thinking like, how ironic that now.
Because that was old school rave fashion. Like
Yeah,
that at the original Trésor, a lot of those old photos you see these really like like tech bios fashion with face masks and stuff.
And I also didn't know like what the deal with the face masks was beyond just fashion. And then I was told, I was explained like, oh, it's Vicks Vapor Rub on the inside too, so that they can inhale it because they're on ecstasy. And it's something like I didn't do it then, so
Wow,
I wasn't. I inquired, but I was like, what's with the face masks?
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, but it was a sea of like beautiful candy ravers my age, and it melted my brain because it wasn't just the music. It was like a full immersion into a proper like underground subculture that I'd never had exposure to before, and I would have been like in 94.
So you felt
I was like fucking 19 or 20.
and you must have felt
Now
like,
you know how old I am.
yeah.
But anyway, I was
33.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you must
and I
have felt transported.
I did. It was fantastic.
And what did that?
And then that very moment, I was like, "This is the fucking place for me." I love all of this. And then it became like a kind of like a culture shock in my normal circle because little by little, I started to like lose the Carlton look.
Okay.
But I did it very strategically because I didn't want my fashion shift to be so drastic from Carlton to like candy raver. That's just too shocking. You can't do that from one day to the next.
So you're doing like a beautiful crossfade between Carlton and
over the next months, I just strategically started acquiring little things to add to my ensemble, to my fashion.
Oh, nice.
Little by little, and then I remember suddenly I turned 21, I think, and then that's when I like the next day I got like a buzz cut. And I had a buzz cut with long sideburns, and I was like, my look was very like dark candy raver.
Okay.
That's how I would explain my look back then. It was sort of candy, but because I was into techno and everything, it was like a lot darker, and I was like a little dark elf.
And what did that represent to you during that time, or where you were coming from? It's like you're entering into this whole different world. You must have felt like freedom in some senses.
Yeah, total freedom, and that I had found my people. That I had found, because coming from suburban South Jersey, I'd never been exposed to that. And then I was lucky that one of my besties was this techno DJ. So from then on, I was automatically back then it was just a lot of these like underground warehouse parties and outlaw parties, and some of them were legit, some of them weren't, some of them were total, you know how it is. It was that. And then a lot of my friends were either DJs that were DJing out, or they were KDU DJs.
Gotcha.
And then full circle, that's how we met. I met you sonically before I met you in person.
Oh,
that's
really?
how it was. It was through Yosuke.
Oh yeah, I was playing
Yosuke,
back to back with Yosuke on WKDU.
And I was listening in my kitchen because I tuned in to listen to Yosuke's show, and you were the guest, and you were fucking murdering it, and you were dropping Jeff Mills, and that was my first like, who the fuck is that? I gotta meet that guy.
Yeah, I remember
incredible.
when I
went
met you.
off and I told Yosuke, and Yosuke was like, oh, it's my friend Emil. You'll meet eventually. And then that's when I met you. But you were already in my mind. Your set already preceded you because I'd heard that like a month before. And
Wow.
yeah. So
I love that you call me Emil. No one calls me Emil.
Emil.
It's very
Emil?
It
Do they
warms
say-
me. People say Emil, which is very
Oh.
American, but it warms me up when you say Emil.
Emil with an accent over the E.
It's great.
Emil.
Yeah, I love it. So, did you
Cool.
feel supported in those early rave parties? Like, was it a supportive environment? Like, what was the vibe? Kind of.
Oh, remember Plur? Back then
Plur,
it was
yeah.
all...
Someone asked
yeah.
me for a Plur knuckle tap recently. Actually.
Oh, cute. Yeah. Well, okay, so I would, like, if I was an anthropologist looking at that, I would say mid to late 90s, there was a cultural sense of Plur in that
Okay.
world. And of course, it faded eventually.
For
because
those of you at home who don't know what Plur means, Plur stands for. Go ahead.
peace, love, unity, respect.
Isn't
Yeah.
that great, everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now people laugh at it.
Exactly.
So yeah, so much for that. So anyway, yeah, but that was very much that faded over time because that scene, as I'm sure you've had other guests or other OGs comment,
Yeah.
it eventually we all know what happened. Like any scene, like eventually it became hyper commercial and
Right.
it became all about big venues making money at the door.
Yeah.
and it
And like
changed
90,
the culture.
96, 97, drugs became like
Yep.
a really big
Yeah, I'd say
thing.
late. Right, exactly. As it got later, and for me, I never I was super late to that game.
Yeah.
Like in the rave scene, I would only by the end of it, I would just maybe like have a drink and smoke some weed.
Yeah.
And back then, I wasn't doing any of that. But I noticed the later and later it got in the game, the younger the crowd was getting and the more
Yeah.
drugs. And
Mhm.
that was just like a depressing situation because there would then be like multiple raves that you'd have multiple ODs.
Yeah.
And then obviously the cops had a hard on for breaking that, for busting that. And
Right.
it just became like, ugh. And I
So-
felt like, yeah.
Yeah, like if you were, so it's interesting to hear about that because here we are in 2020 and we have this space called Dustbunny, which I would consider a really supportive community.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of is like a Plur kind of community.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's parallels between this space and some of the parties you experienced in like 95?
For me, subjectively, because I obviously like I can't speak for that entire era of 20 plus years in Philly, but absolutely, I feel like we have, or I feel like for me, the journey has gone full circle because now we are in this new phase where Philly is kind of killing it with our talent and our capacity to throw these amazing underground
Yeah.
parties with a community that I think is, for the most part, pretty like loving and supportive and
For sure.
safe and
Yeah.
very supportive of our own self-expression as creatives, that we're all up to cool shit and that we're all super, well, look at your zine, like that's
Yo,
a great
give it
great
up.
visual testament of like,
Give
look
it
at,
up for the
look at this.
Dustbunny
Yeah.
zine, everybody.
To all of
Give
you.
it up.
Yeah. I didn't get a piece in on time, but maybe if you do a next one, I'll submit a piece.
Oh,
but,
yeah, we'll be
But I
coming
feel
back.
like we've culturally, I feel like now there's a renaissance or a new era that I don't remember since then of that degree of like, whoa, any weekend, one of us, a friend, somebody will be throwing some sort of event that'll have good music and a good crowd and a good
Yeah.
vibe, and that's pretty magical. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I agree. It's interesting to see. I feel like a lot of these new projects are also being started by people who never felt accepted by the rave culture, who felt it was kind of just really alienating. So I feel like a lot of the new people are people who are trying to create something that they never had in a sense. But I want to bring this conversation to Fistful of Kisses. So for people who don't know, Fistful of Kisses, before quarantine, was a monthly party that Jorge hosted at Dalek, which I'm sure will come back post quarantine.
They're hanging in there. They're like delivering and selling stuff out the back door.
Dalek,
So,
shout out Dalek.
Yeah. If you live in
If
the
you need-
neighborhood,
hit up
yeah.
Dalek for the
Yeah, support
deliveries
Dalek.
if you're getting hungry. So
Beer
so you-
too. They're selling beer. I'm pretty sure.
Beer, yeah, everybody loves that.
Sure.
So you were doing a monthly party at Dalek called Fistful of Kisses, and it's, as far as I know, it was the only consistent fundraiser dance party in Philly. Every single month you chose a different cause and did a fundraiser party, and you DJ'd with your friend Justin.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about Fistful of Kisses and how you brought some of your 90s rave experiences and infused that into 2020 community oriented. You call it party with a purpose.
Yeah, or at least in the beginning I did as a little hook, but so it all goes back to earlier in the 90s at some point when so this is post rave era that has dissipated. I had a monthly at the old Silk City. This is like later 90s,
Gotcha.
early aughts. Remember Buena Vista Social Club when that came out?
Sounds familiar.
It's that documentary of like old veteran Cuban musicians that had been part of like the golden era of this Cuban dance genre called son cubano.
Son
which
cubano.
Is and it precedes salsa. It's like it's the genre of music that salsa eventually evolved from. And then salsa evolved and became something else and became more global. But the root of it is...
Can you tell us the name of the documentary again?
Oh, it's just called Buena Vista Social Club.
Buena Vista Social Club.
Yeah.
Check that out, everybody.
I forget when I think it came out in 1999, but it was basically it was like a class reunion of like, let's find all these old Cuban musicians that are in there. Not all of them, but a lot of them were like... Most of them were 70 and older.
Okay.
And retired.
Yeah.
And got them all together, and then it like reignited their careers because then they went on tour. Then they put out a bunch of albums together and solo projects, and they're all like playing basically like Cuban dance roots music,
like pre-salsa.
Pre-salsa, but it's right. It's a lot of early salsa was the classics of Cuban song, just reinterpreted and played as covers.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
Then it eventually, like, obviously salsa evolved in places like New York, and that's a whole like separate story. But anyway, that era, I started DJing. That was my first time DJing, and it wasn't electronic music. It was all Cuban. That's what I would play. It was a solid monthly Cuban night at Silk City, and I did that for a couple of years, and it was great. Fast forward to 2016, Fuckhead gets elected. And now I'm thinking, I'd been itching to get back into DJing for a while, but I wanted it to be different. I didn't want to do Cuban music again, and I wanted to do techno and house and
you
disco.
And a ton of your ears were experienced
Yeah.
in the realms of techno.
Yeah. And I'd wanted to get back in for a while, but then when 2016 came around, I thought, and also with my organizing, with political organizing, I'd been dormant for a while because I think when you look back at, I think it's perfectly normal that if you've spent a long time as an activist or organizer, that you take breaks and dip in and dip out, and I think it's worked for me because it's avoided burning out. So in 2016, when that happened, I thought I need to get back in, but I also want to start DJing again. So for me, it was like a practical two birds with one stone situation. Is that I thought, how do I combine those two? How do I get a night together? And I already knew what I wanted in my head. I was like, I want a monthly. I want it to be Friday or Saturday. I have two or three venues picked out where this could work. Dalek was one of them.
Yeah.
Because of their crowd, because of the vibe there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it could, what I want to do would work there. And
For those of us at home who haven't been to Dalek, can you tell us a little bit about the vibe at Dalek?
Sure. So I think it's been around for like 30 years, if I'm not mistaken. And it's
feels like a living room almost.
Yeah, and it's a family-owned Ethiopian Eritrean restaurant. It was owned by an older couple that they passed away, and their children, it's a son and daughter, they now run it and manage it. And it's been in the family since then, and it's like a fixture in that neighborhood. And over the years, because of where it is, the crowd is really cool. It's really like an eclectic, diverse crowd, and that's the crowd I wanted in my mind. I was
the crowd is amazing.
Mm-hmm,
when I go to your party, it's very different from like a warehouse party.
Yeah,
even Dustbunny parties. I think you do a really amazing job at dissolving these ideas of like, I am the DJ and I am here to present my music. It's like when you play, sometimes you have live percussion, like people doing percussion.
We tried that a couple times,
Yeah.
but it was too big for the room,
Gotcha.
and that worked really well. That's my friend Joshua, who's totally rad, and that works. I think in an open space outside or in a bigger.
Uh-huh.
But we tried that a couple times.
A little too lively.
A little too. I think it's just too much big sound for a room that small. So
Okay.
that the last time he tried that, we only tried it twice there, like a couple years ago. But he brought out timbales, and timbales are awesome.
Yeah.
But they're a big sound. Like they just filled the space and kind of overpowered the music. And so
It's
we're
cool
not
that
gonna,
you tried though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
think
I
that
had nothing to
speaks
lose.
I feel like it speaks to your approach to the whole party thing, which is, yeah, it's like I said, it feels like people hanging out in a living room. Like people are yipping and yapping and interacting
should.
with each other.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
feels very like this big infusion versus a lot of warehouse parties can feel a little cold and like the people next to you are strangers. Like when you walk into a Fistful of Kisses party, you know, people embrace you.
Yeah, I think that's thanks to the space and the regular crowd because of where it is. Because so if you've never been there, the space feels like 3 parts restaurant, living room, 4 parts lounge, bar. It's got like multiple little spaces for everybody.
Yep.
And it has like a regular crowd of drinkers in the back bar
Yep.
that are there like every day.
Yep,
and
holding
then
it
it's
down.
got yeah, and then it's got like young queer trans folks that come out there to dance parties that live in the neighborhood too, and everyone in between. So the demographic that you will experience when you go in there, I feel like it's very much a space where, for me, it was super important that it wasn't cliquish, that it wasn't a scene, that
Yeah.
anybody could walk in there and feel comfortable having a drink or dancing. And that's why I was like, that's the crowd I would already want. So
Right.
instead of creating it from scratch, if it's already there, and also I don't think that they had a monthly dance night quite like what we were playing. They have
Yeah.
other weeklies and monthlies there, but
Yeah.
mostly it'll be like reggae, hip hop, that leaning towards that whole. So they didn't have a night like mine, and it was just it ended up being a really good match. And in March, before the lockdown happened, it would have been our second year. It would have been our 2-year anniversary.
That's
Would've been-
for
yeah.
Philly, 2 years of doing a consistent
We're a
monthly party.
terrible toddler.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
people who don't know about the lifespan of Philly spaces and parties, 2 years is a long time.
And that's what I wanted from the beginning too. And from the beginning, I thought if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to roll up my sleeves and give it a name and give it an aesthetic and like really create and cultivate this night, I don't want it to last a few months. I want it to be like a fixture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like Fistful of Kisses is in a sense, it's not just about Fistful of Kisses. It's about like a much bigger. You're trying to encourage this bigger mindset towards culture and how to be part of culture and how to shape it.
Yeah.
Which also ties into, like you said, you took a. I want to actually skip back chronologically because you said you took a break from the party culture for a while.
Oh, but about Fistful of Kisses,
Oh, go
so
for
we
it.
don't skip that part because I forgot. Because I'll go on these tangents and then no answers are answered, no questions are answered. In 2016 when I wanted to do this, I thought, how do I do that and reactivate my political organizing again without burning out? So I thought, make it a fundraiser, and at Dalak there's never a cover. So that's just their policy. But I figured, no, that's fine. What we'll do is we'll just make it a fundraiser, and there is no cover, and there's just like suggested donation, and every month is 100% of the donations go to a local grassroots organizing group or campaign. Most of the time it's local, or if they're national, they have a local presence. They have like a local chapter. And my criteria are pretty loose for who gets the money. Like, obviously, if you're like a well-funded nonprofit, you don't need our money. It's meant for anything that's like grassroots and broke and anti-capitalist. You have to be anti-capitalist because if you're not, you don't need our money.
Hey.
So that was the the idea. And what else about that? Oh yeah, so but about Philly Socialists, that's where Philly Socialists comes in. Is that I attended? They had like a general mass interest meeting held at the First Unitarian, and it was their first one.
And when was that?
It was when was it was I think February. When was the election? It was 2016, right? Was the election?
Yeah.
And then this was like early 2017.
Okay.
I think it was their first general interest meeting after the election, and it was at First Unitarian, and it was packed.
And was this around the time where you were kind of phasing out of rave culture, or was this like?
Oh, I'd been
later?
done. This is
you had been done for
2017.
a while.
2017.
And had you been doing political stuff before you went to that first meeting?
For sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about your segue from rave culture into political activist culture?
Oh, I'd been doing them both at the same time.
Like even as far back as like 95.
Oh yeah, for
Gotcha.
sure, for sure. Yeah, because when I first moved to Philly, also like, young college kid in the big city, you have exposure to political organizing more than you did before. So same thing. I found groups that I organized with, and they came and went, because that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So some of them aren't around anymore. Some of them, like you take breaks and then you get back in. So fast forward to 2017, by then I was like ready. I wanted to start DJing again. But that whole time I'd been like nerding out in my bedroom like we all do, and collecting music and farting around with my gear and trying to make it work and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and then also,
for sure.
And then I'd looked at the landscape in Philly of like, what are all the political groups doing, and what are they up to, and how do I get? So I went to this Philly Socialist General Interest meeting, and I'd already read about the kind of organization that they are and how they operate, and I was already pretty sure, like, I think they're a good match for me.
And that was the first meeting they ever had.
No, they'd had multiple before, but that was the first that they'd had after Trump won the election, and it was a really big turnout. It was a really big turnout. Naturally, like I think all the organizations and groups in Philly reported really big numbers of new recruits, because people were like itching to get politically involved after the election. So it was like that for them. It was like that for everybody. But so then in there, I thought, oh, the way that they operate internally is that they will have at any given time multiple projects going on. And if you just like walk up as a new member and you want to get involved, you'd look at any one of those projects or multiple ones, and then just sign up and get involved where you want to, according to your interest. So in my mind, I thought, all right, so what I'm going to do is quietly develop my DJ night. I'm gonna plan it all out and have it all ready. Mm-hmm. And when all the pieces are in place, then I'm gonna unveil it to Philly Socialists as a proposal to, like, hey, because I was gonna do it with or without their support.
And that was the plan you were
But
hatching.
ideally, if I could have both, that's what. But I was going to do it anyway. It was going to be a fundraiser. I wanted it to be a monthly at Dalek. I had the name. I had everything. But the last piece was, if Philly Socialists supports it, they have a budget for socials. And I figured they could help me out with promoting it online. Like, basically, they will... What they pay for out of their budget is my Facebook promotions and literally the pink paper that I cut and print my flyers on.
Yeah.
But I print my flyers myself. I cut them myself. It's all so Philly Socialist pays for the paper and the online promotion, and then it's a fundraiser. And then by now, 2 years later, it also became accidentally a portal for recruitment, because after a while I started seeing a pattern of that we get a lot of like people through the door that were there to party, but also politically and radically minded, and around my DJ booth,
which is it's a natural connection, right? It's natural to connect the dots between activism and techno, because like we were talking about,
it should be
because in the 90s, peace, love, and respect, peace, love, whatever the heck the keep the plur thing was. So yeah, it was like techno parties were radical for a long time. It was like an alternative space for humans, an alternative mindset. So it should be natural that there's a connection between activism.
I always thought that.
And politics. Yeah. So I was curious if you could tell us a little bit about like to just go back to that first socialist meeting you went to, was it similar walking into that in some senses to like some of the first raves you walked into?
They both felt like churches because the truck feels like a church.
That's really interesting.
The truck is sort of church-like. I mean, I don't know now because I haven't been since it got sold, right, and closed or whatever.
Maybe.
I don't know what happened now. I'm not updated about the situation of the truck, but I thought that it got sold and bought and closed, but the old truck very much felt like a church. It's sort of but for me, the political part especially comes from when you look at the origin story of techno.
Yeah.
When you look at how techno started in Detroit and the social conditions and the where and the why and the who, it's totally fascinating to me, and it's inside the context of a social political reality. It didn't happen in a vacuum. It didn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
You know, it's all related to economics and the car industry and economic peaks and valleys and well, look where we are now, you know.
Yeah.
Like that. I think that our community should be naturally anti-capitalist, but that's me.
No, I mean, nobody, like, who's happy out there? Somebody put me a comment in the comment box if you're actually happy with the state.
Do you have a cricket
effect?
I
gotta make a cricket. Next time I gotta make a cricket tape. Cricket.
Who loves capitalism?
Yeah.
And then you play the cricket.
Yeah, shout out. Someone make a comment if you love capitalism.
Hurrah!
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it should be, right? Nobody's happy right now. Nobody is thriving. Even probably the people with shitloads of money are depressed as fuck. Like, everybody's probably
that will not save you.
No, not at all.
So you were asking. Well, in my mind, I just thought when I pitched this to Philly socialists, I thought this is if it goes well, it should be a natural match, because I feel strongly that if you're a creative here and now, I think anybody who's creative right now can weaponize their talent and their skill, weaponize it against this fucking dystopia, and use it as a weapon. So I thought, I don't want to just be a DJ on its own. I want that to produce something and forward something. And how do I do that? And not just me, but all my friends who are dancers, including me. Like, when we go out and dance till 4 or 5 in the morning, it's an outlet that we need for our survival. But also,
well said.
How do we weaponize it? How do we, if it were up to me, we'd fucking weaponize everything. And I know people are like, I know that we don't want to use like too much war lingo because it's problematic, but I'm not using it as an imperialist warmonger. I'm using it as someone who wants to commit resistance. And
a lot of people I talk to now, I tell a lot of people that it's not enough just to be a DJ. Being a good DJ in 2020 is also being a good activist. They go hand in hand. If you're not an activist and you're just playing like fun party music, you're actually like not pushing this culture forward at all.
Yeah.
And I think you're setting a great role model with Fistful of Kisses and how you're approaching that party. But I also want to take
anyone can do it too. Like, that's for a long time, that was my recurring. I would always want to impress that upon new members coming into Philly Socialists, that you can tell when you meet somebody of like, oh, you're an artist, or you're a creative, and you're working on all this cool shit. You could do that within. I'm obviously speaking for Philly Socialists, but I would imagine that you can do that with any of your political organizing, whatever group you're with, whatever talent or passion or skill you have. There's a way that you can always fold it into your politics. So that it doesn't have to be separate. It doesn't have to be.
But to all you people out there who are DJs and throw your little parties, just think about it this way. You're getting a lot of people under one roof together, people who might not otherwise interact at all. And that's something really powerful, and I think people should think about what to do with when you're holding that space, how to utilize that.
That's a good way to put it, for sure. Yeah.
For sure. So I want to take a step back and just for people some people at home might not actually know what the Philly Socialists are. So I was wondering if you could just start us from square one. What are the Philly Socialists?
Okay, wow, big question.
Tough question, huh?
Yeah. So the first thing, just to set up context, is that I think in any American city at this point, there are multiple groups that will have socialist in their name, and just to keep it like there are other groups in Philly that also have socialist in their name that we get along with, that we team up with, that we work with. We have friends among them, but specifically, the one I'm talking about, just to clarify, just to avoid any it's Philly Socialist, capital P, capital S.
Right, not to be confused with all the other socialist things, even though they're friends.
Yeah, who are totally fine. Like, it's not about, but it's just so that we, like,
Gotcha.
That's specifically who I mean. And
so what do the Philly Socialists do? I mean, you do a lot of stuff, but can you list us off like a few things that the Philly Socialists are involved in Philly on the ground?
The three biggest right now that are, and there's something about the internal model of the way Philly Socialists works, where if you start a project that gets traction, that gets more and more participants, that grows on its own, eventually it can have its own government, its own budget, its own elected central committee, and then it splits off. Mm-hmm. So right now, Philly Tenants Union is one of those. Philly Tenants Union broke off from Philly Socialist.
Gotcha.
Not because of any political drama. It was kind of architecture. The architecture was already...
let's organize this.
That's supposed to happen.
Yeah, let's build some shelves and we'll put this on one shelf and then let's make some space for these different
And if
things.
that keeps happening, that's the goal. That's the point, is that if... I think the long-term goal for Philly Socialists and the way we operate is as an incubating, that if a project becomes its own thing, it can break off and then be completely independent.
That's great. The tenants union is a big one, and that's especially relevant right now, right?
Yep, right.
Because everybody's dealing with tenant issues.
And then we have Dignity, which is organizing in the workplace, which the way that they operate is that they're set up to support and come in as a team to anyone in their workplace that wants to organize their employees. We are like Dignity is a support network that can come in with legal advice and funding and training and letting people know, like, these are your legal rights as a worker, how you're protected, and this is what you can do. And I think before the lockdown, there were maybe like 2 or 3 campaigns going on at different workplaces. So there's that. And then the third was what was formerly the Mutual Aid Project, which is now the Community Aid... What's the R for? Community Aid Response Project, CARP.
CARP.
Yeah, so those are the big 3 that we have now that we're working on.
Gotcha.
That are the most like active, most radical, most... By radical, I mean like it's where the real work is getting done and where I think we're gaining territory locally.
Yeah, and y'all get busy.
They get busy.
I've seen some of the socialist gatherings and some of the things, and I mean, even my housemate is involved with the Philly Socialists. Like, y'all get busy. It's
That's
cool.
Right. That's
so
right.
how? So
that's
how
the
do you,
idea. That's the idea.
Yeah, give it up, everybody, for the socialists right now. Crushing it out there. All right, so how do you fit in?
Those are the big 3 right now, and then my term just ended literally today as director of socials and retention. So
we talked about that a little bit. So you used to be the director of
socials and retention.
Gotcha.
And then we have a central committee. Anybody who's a paying member, dues are $10 a month, and anybody who's a paying member can run for a position and get elected, and your term lasts a year. And then you can run again for a second term. So 2-year maximum. It's anybody.
Yep.
I think just generally as a good, I think new members. But see, now we have new members that are already like, because of the pandemic, again, and I'm sure other political organizations in Philly, I'm sure, are going to be reporting the same thing.
Yep.
We've also had like a big boost in new members.
Great.
That are the sense of urgency when shit like this happens is obviously like it turns the heat up, so people want to roll up their sleeves and jump in.
Right. Yeah. As tragic as the death caused by Corona is, it's really putting a fire under a lot of people's asses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right.
Which is great. And in that regard, if people want to check out the Philly Socialists at home, or maybe want to be involved or dip their toes in, what are some good places to check out the Philly Socialists in terms of like Instagram or websites or people to talk to?
All of it, all of that,
all of it.
There's we have a big online presence. There's a Facebook page. There's a regular website. If you just Google Philly Socialists, you'll have like multiple ways to there's an Instagram account.
Gotcha.
And then they're constantly like updating, like, here's what we're up to. If you want to get plugged in, here's who to email or who to call or what event to show up to. And now obviously it's not in person, but
so you hear that, people? Just Google Philly Socialist and you'll get hooked up. You'll find a lot of stuff.
And then personally, for me, I think I always like to tell like fellow, if you're already radicalized and a lefty, or you want to start organizing or start, I don't necessarily, I'm not a good recruiter in that way, that I don't like to tell people, here, join Philly Socialists, because it's what I say. It's the one I like.
Yep.
I think people should shop around and find the thing that works for them, but I'm happy to tell people, this is why I picked Philly Socialists.
Right. Some people might, they might want to join Dustbunny, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Or both.
So,
I mean, they should,
both.
Technically,
both. You hear that? Both.
What I liked about Philly Socialists is immediately in their literature and in their action, they weren't about sitting around and debating theory and talking about.
They're putting that's the rubber
important.
to the road.
Yeah, I already felt like I've read enough. I have books on my bookshelf at home.
You want to get out there.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to like show up and sit in a circle and debate stuff about doctrine and schisms that happened years, like decades ago.
Right.
And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like older generation of American leftists that have had schisms and all these little, and I just thought like, I don't have time or energy for that shit.
Yeah, nobody has time. Right. We gotta just get to it.
So we're really mixed as a group like that. We're very heterogeneous. We have members that self-identify, as ridiculous as it might sound to like a skeptic. They might say, oh, but how could you have members that self-identify as Maoist and others who self-identify as anarchist, and you all work together? Well, I'm sorry, but that's what it is. That's the culture of Philly Socialists, that we don't really have enough time, nor are we interested in sitting around and debating with each other about stuff like that, because we've all been arrestable together. We've all held the line together. We've all developed a culture of solidarity that we trust each other and we know that we have each other's backs. And the dogmatic, super debatey, like that stuff, that's just not relevant now. It's not the monster that's facing us right here.
Yeah,
it's
at the end of the day, we're all different. We all think a little different, but if we can have solidarity, and y'all never heard of diversity before? You hear about this thing called diversity? It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
And then the main thing that we do is what's called base building, which is on a community level that you build popular power. And it's not, for example, like DSA does that. DSA fights its fights through electoral politics. We don't officially endorse any candidates ever for office. We're not anti-electoral politics. We're not anti, but we don't endorse. And we don't operate in that system of like, if we get enough signatures that we send to this congressperson or we don't operate like that. With our thing, it's base building at
Yeah.
a local level so that your neighbors and your communities get radicalized and realize we have people power. That's our weapon. We have people power.
Hell yeah.
And we have people power as workers. We have people power as tenants. We have people power as artists. We have people power. But that's like our secret weapon.
Yeah.
So that's what all of our projects at any given time are constantly like trying to build a base.
Yo,
And the Maoists call
that's
that
super cool.
mass line, but they didn't invent it. But that's like Maoists will call it mass line, and that's what they mean when they say that. But I think right now every American major city has groups like us that are parallel to us that just started organically. They just started right then and there in their local. Like Philly Socialists started in Philly. We don't have any national branches. We're not affiliate. We're not like a branch of another national office in New York or DC. It's
And that's
strictly
important.
here.
That's important. Nothing is forced, Just let it
No,
unfold naturally.
we're locally autonomous, but every city has now, and then we have there's something called the Marxist Center now, where like most American major cities have something like Philly Socialist. It just started organically. And once we started recognizing each other, like, oh, over there in Houston or over there in Chicago, you're doing the same shit we are. You look a lot like we do.
You're building
And-
snowballs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that eventually.
Yeah,
So
hell
now,
yeah.
now there's like an annual, I think this year it might have got canceled, but there's an annual Marxist Center conference. And the Marxist Center, it's not a physical center like a building, although that would be pretty cool. But it's meaning like it's all these groups, all these independent little grassroots groups that are socialist identifying, that believe in base building, that are spread across the U.S.
Hell yeah.
We'll meet once a year and
That's super cool.
compare notes and compare strategies and build. And anyway,
For sure,
so
that's
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
So you're someone who likes to get busy. And so you mentioned recently that you actually took
Busy bee.
You're a busy bee. So you actually mentioned recently that you took a step back from the socialists. You're still part of it, but it sounds like you're channeling your energy into some other things. Do you want to tell us what the future looks like for you, or what you're thinking about in terms of Fistful of Kisses, or just anything really?
Sure, totally. So a couple months ago, I was excited. It took me a year, but what was a challenge for me as being director of socials and retention in Philly Socialist on Central Committee was it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for one person, and it was a struggle for me to do as much as I wanted without like a solid team. And my team couldn't be other people on Central Committee because they all were in the same boat as I was. Like if to the left of me was director of fundraising and to the right of me was director of recruitment, they couldn't be my team. They already had their own things that they were responsible for and really busy with. So that was a consistent challenge for me to
Which is kind of a theme in a lot of underground organizations. It's a lot of work comes down on a little amount of people.
And it won't get done at all. It'll just sit. It won't get done if you don't do it, but more could be done if you had a team.
So just a small little side note to you people at home: don't be afraid to get busy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need help out here. We need help.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work. If there's any successful underground organization, you better believe someone's behind the scenes busting their.
Oh yeah.
You know what?
And the more of us are busy, the easier the work gets. The easier the lifting.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I spent a year trying to. In my mind, I thought what I want to do, ideally, is have a spread of monthly events that are recurring, that I don't have to bust my ass every month.
Yep.
Like a monthly. Like if it's got its own momentum, then people will relate to it. Like, oh, it's that time of the month again, and they can just jump in. So in my mind, what I wanted for Philly Socialists was we already had Fistful.
Yeah.
So we already had monthly dance party. I wanted a monthly movie night. I wanted a monthly. We have a member who talk about a team. Like this member did that on their own because it's what they wanted. I wanted there to we were both like, how do we? I wanted an event that was once a month that was also not based on drinking alcohol or in
Very
a bar
important.
that was like. So the idea was, and that was like a monthly hangout in a coffee house for like 3 or 4 hours for people to just work together. They didn't have to meet formally, but just like, bring your laptop or your book.
So you're
and we'll
thinking
just hang
about
out.
starting
So-
some new events similar to Fistful of Kisses, but some different flavors.
Oh, so
or-
now, so after a year of trying to develop all these monthly things, right before the lockdown, there were like really cool new social events planned that all came crashing down because obviously now it's gone now. And in my mind, I already thought I don't want to run again for director. I don't want to run a second term because it was also just a lot of work, and I feel totally cool with letting someone else that's a newer member take the reins, and I can help them with the transition and be a support and mentor if they need that. But I thought, I don't want to do this a second year because I just felt like I was constantly, like the water was constantly here, and it's a lot of work for one person. And I've got the monthly, and I thought if I only did, under ideal circumstances, if I only did Fistful of Kisses and that was my political contribution to Philly Socialists, it's a monthly fundraiser, and it's also a doorway for recruiting new members, and it's also exposure. It's also like a forward-facing monthly event where people who come out, they're not being recruited to, like nobody at Fistful of Kisses is going to ask you, did you donate or do you want to sign up? I never wanted it to have that culture. So when you walk up, you'll see like I've got my table that I set up on, and then on the table will be our newspaper, some flyers, some information, literature.
Some Hershey's Kisses.
Of course,
Woo!
Hershey's Kisses that you grab a fistful of, and then there'd be like literature from the organization that was getting the funding. So I just figured, like you said, like I just wanted to provide a space that people could come in, and then they take it from there. But there's no like string attached. There's no.
Yeah.
So anyway, after I'm still going to be doing that no matter what. No matter what, like
you have to.
Yeah.
It's an important Philly party.
No matter what incarnation it takes. But thank you for saying it's important. It's
we're nimble.
It's important for me because it's
like we were talking about, though. Like a lot of these underground movements, we're nimble and we can adapt.
Yeah,
whereas
for sure.
big corporations get stuck in the gears.
For sure. So I've been. I don't know yet, but from what I can see, Dalak is hanging in there, and they're doing okay. And I'd be naive to think that everything would just flip back and click back to the way it was before. So we'll see. But I was eager to like finish my term, and I did. And there'll be a new director of socials that I will totally help out. And then with now my freed up time, what I'm gonna do, I was telling Kevin on the way over, is because all these things that Philly Socialist is up to is just take a look and see where I want to get involved and pitch in, and then that also includes Dustbunny, because now I'll just have like, but it's either that and my political organizing, and to me they go hand in hand because
that's so cool.
They're all working towards the same goal.
And we would, we'd love to have your help here. It's super cool to hear what you're up to and what you're looking forward to. Real quick, we have about 8 minutes left. And I want to talk about some fun stuff. We've been talking about this heavy stuff. Let's talk about some fun stuff. So I know you were talking about stew earlier.
Stew, yeah.
Tell us a little about where you learned to make stew and what kind of stews you make.
Oh, okay, sure. I'm a fan.
This is a hard 180 there.
I'm a fan of stews.
Me too.
This started because earlier, before the cameras in the studio started recording, and we went live, we were talking about food, and the local nearby Freddy's and Tony's. I don't know if their beef stew is still up to. Like, I haven't had it lately.
Oh, I've had it. I had it maybe 6 months ago. Fire.
Yeah? Okay, cool.
It's good.
Good to know. So now you know. But yeah, so I've always loved a good stew. You know me.
Is that like a Cuban traditional thing, or is that more just like your personal?
You mean, do Cubans have a natural inclination to be stew lovers?
Yeah.
I can't speak for the entire population, but I think that we're very pro stew.
Oh,
We're
okay.
a stew-friendly people.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, who isn't really? Like,
True,
I can't imagine.
seriously.
I don't know about any national populations that are just like,
Yeah. So to
Those-
make a stew, you need a crock pot, right?
well, it would help. I don't think you can only, but that's my best stews have come out of the crock pot.
Cool.
And there's one stew that I'm a really big fan of, and I don't know that it originated there, but you find it in Moroccan and Tunisian cuisine, and it's called tagine, and you can't find any good tagine in Philly. At least.
Oh shit, Kiko! Shout out Kiko in the chat room. Sorry, go ahead. Kiko was on my talk show last
cool.
time.
I was going to be like, what? Does Kiko make tagine?
Maybe, I don't know.
So I looked it up, but I was like, you know what? I'm sure that to make a tagine, you have to have this special thing that's also called a tagine. The stew is called a tagine, and the dish that you bake it in is called a tagine, and it's expensive and hard to find.
Okay.
But I was like, wait a minute. It's basically the same technology as a crock pot. It's basically
Gotcha.
like 6 hours slow cooking in this like ceramic clay glazed
Sounds
thing.
like great quarantine food.
Yeah,
Because we're all just home all day.
absolutely it is. So if you Google tagine, you'll see what it looks
Check
like.
it out. Google
But
tagine, everybody.
Google tagine and you'll see what it looks
Go
like.
for it.
So,
Hell yeah.
so like 6 months ago, I had this idea of like, surely there must be a way to make these in a crock pot. So I figured that out, and I found some tagine recipes, and I made 3 different ones in a crock pot, and they were
Cool.
heaven. So
Well, shit, bring some over sometime.
I will.
Will you?
But now my old crock pot broke, so that's the next order of business.
Oh, okay.
Of business is
Gotcha.
to acquire
Business.
to acquire a new crock pot.
Cool.
And then I'll
Also-
show up with stew.
I also one thing I wanted to bring up is that every time you roll into Dustbunny, because Dustbunny is in a predominantly Spanish-speaking neighborhood, and I'm terrible at Spanish, but I'm trying to work on my slang and stuff.
Sure.
Every time you roll into Dustbunny, you give me some new slang. The last time, I believe it was que bole.
Oh, que bola.
Que bola.
That won't
Okay.
help you here. That won't help you in this neighborhood.
Right, because this is mostly Puerto Rican, Dominican neighborhood.
So I always specify. I always should specify with you, and I shouldn't even teach you any Cuban slang.
Oh, it's so fun though.
It's fun, but I don't think it'll serve you so much.
Well, it
in
ties
this
in
area.
because, like,
But-
Kiko, who was here last time, is Dominican, and Kiko taught me que lo que, which is what's the what.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're around Dustbunny and you run into someone on the street and you might want to talk to them, you could say que lo que.
yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that'll get you into trouble or not.
No. But if they're not Dominican and they don't know what you mean, presuming that the person hearing you is
Kiko
not
says
Dominican.
they'll get it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well,
but
maybe. I
for
don't
you,
know.
but
'Cause
if
okay,
y'all
so
run into Jorge,
if an English speaker said que bola to a non-Cuban, they'd be like, what? So I
Okay.
think que lo que, same thing. I
Gotcha.
think if you said that in my neighborhood in South Philly, that the Spanish speakers in that neighborhood are predominantly Mexican and Central
Gotcha.
American. If you said que lo que
Yeah.
or que bola,
Yeah.
they'd be like, what?
que bola.
I don't understand. But nobody would be offended. They'd
Okay.
just be like, I don't understand.
Give us
what
one.
you're
Give
saying.
us one really good quarantine Cuban slang.
Oh, I got one.
Go for it.
Not necessarily quarantine, but applicable to the quarantine is when something is like heavy. When something is
Heavy. Yo, Kiko told me that one too.
Oh, but that's
Heavy.
Heavy has
But
been
also-
adopted into Spanish. It's
but also-
basically been we claimed it now.
And
Yeah.
brutal, right?
Brutal.
Brutal.
Yeah, that's pretty universal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to say something that's really fucking cool, you can say brutal, heavy.
Yeah. For anything intense, it could be negatively intense or positively intense. So okay, so
We got
so
2 minutes left.
The phrase I'm going to teach you,
Go for it.
we got this under 2 minutes.
We got
Totally. It's de pinga.
De binga.
De pinga. Yeah,
De pinga.
Yeah, and that can be, no, but you could say that positively or negatively.
What does it mean?
Well, literally, it's quite blue.
What does it mean?
So binga literally is cock. So I'm sorry. But everybody says it, and when not everybody, like school teachers don't say it, but I mean,
Kiko says yes.
yes, it's the expression that you say, especially Cubans, when something is severe.
Oh my God, you have to meet Kiko.
It could be
Kiko
good or
says,
bad.
I
but
love this guy.
Yeah, but you could be like, so how's your quarantine going? And I'd say, de pinga. Or,
Oh, right,
how
de
was
pinga.
Jorge's stew? You could say, coño de pinga.
Oh, but
So it
someone
could be-
also people also say like chévere de pinga, which is
Chévere.
like super cool, kind of, right?
Yeah.
All right.
But it's like, I'm sure there's expressions like that in English that are like,
De pinga.
could be good or could be, you know.
Yo, this interview was de pinga.
De pinga.
Yo, thanks for joining us.
A pleasure.
It was
My
super
pleasure.
fun to have you.
Cool.
Thanks for
Whenever
being on.
you want, talk to my agent, talk to my publicist.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks
you
for
know.
being on Early Day with World.
I love it.
Jorge, everybody. Jorge.
Bye.
Give it up. Give it up for Jorge, everybody. Give it up. Here we go. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned. We got some other stuff later today. We got Black Sesh.